turn. How's everybody doing today? Welcome to another episode of the fantastic, fun, entertaining, best podcast ever on the internet. The Music Guy Podcast. It's a podcast about a couple guys in the music industry just sort of making it happen, trying our best, scraping together a living through the pandemic. My name's
booming industry.
Al Rowe. I'm a music guy from the Beaches in Toronto, Ontario. I produce songs, I make records, I mix records, I play guitar, I sing, and I teach. My friend Michael Hebbs coming at you from Whitby, Ontario. He's a guitarist, he's a composer, he's a teacher. He's hopefully soon to be on a cruise ship. How are you, Mike? What's going on, man?
Well, I was a guitarist in the before times, as Tom Moffat put it.
The before
in
times.
Episode in the 40s or something.
Yeah.
That's my favorite way to refer to pre-COVID times.
I love it.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
But I'm good. I mean, just now I have a gig coming up. Hopefully, not that it's tentative, but as far as I know, it's good to go. But it's on a cruise ship, and I'm going to be gone for 4 months.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting. But we're still going to do the podcast. Me and Al, the ship has Wi-Fi and all that stuff. So me and Al are I'm going to be on a cruise ship. So there'll be some interesting stories.
Yeah.
Or maybe not, maybe a month in, it'll just be really boring. I don't know.
I'm super excited for you, man, to get to do this. I think it's going to be, I think this is going to be huge. I'm jacked. So,
oh yeah. It's like the best situation. Like literally it seems like the guy is a great dude and the guys in the band are great dudes.
Yeah.
And the music they're doing is like 50s, 60s. So it's like lots of guitar. I'm bringing the Helix, but there's a possibility I'm not going to go direct in. We shall see. But it's going to be dope. I'm just working on the songs now, but other than that, just being a fucking deadbeat.
Yeah, so let's do. I mean, we got a couple things to hit up this week. This is going to be a bit of a more open-ended kind of chill episode. Maybe not quite as long as
pessimism podcast.
Some of the yeah. Hopefully not too much, but so. Where do I want to start here? So I want to do like a COVID check-in. I think I just want to sort of hear what your situation is, what you've been up to, how are you? I want to dive into how are you? How is Mike the person? And then maybe I can give folks sort of my spiel as well as what I'm doing. And then we had this interesting article that came up. People were reposting it on Facebook, and I had to look at it, and it was sort of saying like the life of the middle class musician is over. COVID has killed it, and like or if it's not completely dead, we're in danger of losing our musicians.
Sure.
In that low middle class, however you want to describe it. So we're going to get into that and sort of talk about. What do we think of that whole idea of the article, and then sort of where do we see ourselves in terms of when live music does come back, and like how are we going to sort of stand up for ourselves as people of value in this
taxes,
people of self-proclaimed value in this industry. So, but before we get into that, we got to talk about the Patreon. Patreon.com/Music Guy Podcast. What we need to do is get a nice, sweet link to the Patreon to go straight up onto the website. I don't feel like we've done that yet. So we will do that as well. We appreciate the folks who've been going over there and checking that out. That's just a real easy, no strings attached, low pressure way to support a podcast like this one, or maybe there's another content creator out there that you really like. And, you're looking for a way to support them directly. You can cancel anytime. You could change your amount at any time. And there are some pretty cool perks on there in terms of, for us specifically, early access to the episodes, access to the show notes, and even sort of creating your own show if you're super fired up about it, and coaching sessions / lessons with Mike or myself at the higher end of the tiers. So if you're interested in supporting the show, anywhere from like pretty much $1 a show all the way up to sort of, you'd be essentially sort of getting a lesson from us, but you're also supporting the podcast. Hopefully there's some good value in there, and we really do appreciate anybody who's going over there and checking that out, because it helps to support the show, keep us going. So thank you for that.
The validation too, man.
Yeah.
Just knowing that people like what we're doing, because you get likes sometimes on Instagram, and it's nice when somebody it's like, oh, I was listening to your podcast, like a musician is like, oh, listening to it. That's nice. Validation of also like someone's like, oh shit, someone's like paying money for us to do this. That's like, we're not fucking hacks.
It's super meaningful, right? Like every now and again I'll get a message from somebody I haven't heard from in a long time. They'll be like, hey man, really digging the podcast, by the way. And I'm just like, man, that feels really good. So thank you for that. And then of course, if you are in a position where you feel like you can throw a couple of loonies our way, we would take them and put them to good use. So we've also got a sweet little merch store going. Mike, do you want to talk about that?
Oh, it is sweet, and it is it's little. I mean, we got like something like 30 items on there. Anything ranging from masks. I said we had hats before. We don't have hats. I made a design for a hat. All of the merch items I have ordered, and then looked at them and been like, does this not a piece of shit, essentially,
Yes.
So I ordered the hats, and they
quality
sucked.
control.
And hats are the hats they're hard, essentially, in terms of the stitching. My hair is awful, but in terms of the stitching, you have to get sort of a certain depth, certain distance between objects, so you can have certain stitching, and then also certain thickness. So I botched that, and by ordering the hats, I sunk myself some money. So we're gonna wait till we got sweaters, we got t-shirts, masks, stickers, magnets, like literally everything. So if you're like, I want to help them out and buy a magnet or a fucking button, they look dope. Or if you're like, you know what, I'm actually gonna wear this fucking sweater and go all in, then you can do that as well. But hats will be coming, because I think that's the coolest merch.
Hats,
band hats are fucking dope.
Yeah.
But I don't want them to be shitty. I really like, same with the shirts. I ordered every type of shirt that at least interests us, right? Like there was jersey sort of stuff, like a basketball jersey, and I was like, I'm not into that. But I ordered every type of shirt in terms of like thickness, in terms of material, like cotton. There were sort of 4 or 5 that seemed reasonable, and I had to check out the different designs that we had done anyways. And then I chose the one I liked the most, sort of soft, but it looks like it doesn't look like an H&M shirt. You know what I mean?
Right.
It doesn't look like an H&M shirt after you put it in the wash.
Yeah. It's a little more robust. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
I hate it when merch sucks.
The merch looks great, and it's cool. We've sort of gone through a company where it's all made to order, so it's pretty convenient for us. We don't have to sort of hold on to stock, and sort of make that upfront investment. But we felt it was important to actually sort of buy each item ourselves and just have a look at it and make sure that it was good quality. So again, another way to sort of directly support the show and get a little bit of swag in return. So that's on the website, musicguydepodcast.com. Just click on the shop button and it's all right there. So now that you've all fast forwarded to this point in the podcast, let's do the check-in. Like, Mike, just let me know what's going on with you, man. How are you? What have you been up to? Do you feel like you're sort of, are you at peace with the current situation? I guess you're looking forward to the cruise ship, so it's not all sort of doom and gloom as it is for some people, but just give people an idea where you're at, what you're doing, and how you're sort of making ends meet.
You ever watch Groundhog Day?
No, I haven't seen that movie still. I should.
Okay. Well, there's he's stuck in the same day every day.
Right.
It's like that new Amazon Prime movie, Palm Springs, or something like that.
Okay.
It's got Andy Samberg in it. Same thing, stuck in the same day.
Okay.
And there's a point where he reaches where it's real fun, and I feel like I was there in the first few months.
Yeah. Right.
And then there's a point that he reaches where he's depressed.
Right.
And he's just like, this sucks. And he's just sad. And, you know, the character's like, why are you sad? Because they're living their day normally. They don't know it's repeating. But he's like, I've lived this day for like 100 years sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then there's a point where he's angry. And then there's a point where he loops around and he just doesn't give a shit.
Right.
And he's like apathetic.
Yeah. Apathetic. Yeah.
I believe I'm there. But I think it's like we cycle through, at least with my friends. I haven't heard in terms of from you this, but I've heard from like 3 or 4 people. They get to a point where they're like, oh, I'm not doing so well, man. Same with me. Like, oh, I'm not doing so well. I got to do something else. And then, you know, you have a few days where you do something else and it seems to help. But I had, one of my buddies was like, yeah, I've just been doing a lot of sad drinking. And I'm like, I feel that, you know, like I feel like, because you have a few days, you're burnt out. It's like, this is my official non-medical advice, non-doctor diagnosis. It's called COVID burnout. You know, you reach that point, and like the same with him. I was like, let's just go on a walk. Went on a walk for like 3 or 4 hours one night, and I was feeling somewhat down. And afterwards, you feel, you know, a bit better. But you know, and then you feel better for a while, and then you feel shitty for a while. But yeah, I'm okay. I got the cruise to look forward to. It's still like, you know, a month away. So
yeah.
But I'm assuming you're in a similar boat. You seem pretty good. You just got a gauge, so that's cool.
I did, yeah. Fortunately, like that adds a nice element to it where you have something to look forward to. We have something to plan. We were just up north. Yeah. We did a little viewing of a venue that we might be interested in using. So, you know, that adds a layer of excitement to it for sure. I think we're both feeling the same sort of stuff. It's just like, man, you know, you just you reach this point where I think we're all ready for this to be over. I think we have been for a long time. And unfortunately, you just look at it and you're like, it's not going to be for a lot longer. So I think you got to readjust your expectations, which of course is easier said than done, but readjust those expectations to be like, you know, this is going to be weird for another, I don't know, 6 to 12 months, hopefully not more than that, but maybe even more than that. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
At least you're starting to see the vaccines roll out. That's starting to make us feel better.
Yep.
So that's kind of, you know, where I'm at from that standpoint. I think you find different ways to connect with other people. And I think it's like you said, you know, going for walks. Now that it's starting to get warmer out, that's definitely more of a reality. Patios are apparently opening up here, so we'll be able to start doing that. So I think it's going to feel a little bit more quote-unquote normal. At least, you know, we'll have the option to have that outlet of like, yeah, let's just get together for a beer. Let's go to this patio. Or, you know, let's just sit outside on someone's porch and like socially distance, have a couple beers and chat or whatever. It's like you can do that kind of stuff, and I think that's really going to make a big difference as the weather improves. I just hope that, you know, people are responsible and stuff. But you know, in terms of work, I've been fairly fortunate. I mean, all the way through this, I think, and like we've had this conversation before, so I won't repeat it to death, but just, you know, recognizing that it's like, man, I'm okay. I've got my health. The people I care about are healthy.
Yep.
I'm going to be okay. You know, just having that and recognizing that I think is important. Obviously it's challenging. I'm in a spot where I'm making rent every month and I feel very fortunate for that, but I definitely don't feel like I'm, you know, like able to put anything away or save or like plan ahead. It's pretty much just like, okay, I'm going to put together enough lessons and like, hopefully I can get enough work doing whatever else to just sort of put rent together. And unfortunately for me, like the CRB, the government stuff that they're offering right now is just not, I don't think I'm able to claim it because of the way that it, and we talked about this on the last episode a little bit. So again, I won't go into excruciating detail, but the way that they calculate it is against your income minus expenses. And you can't, you know, you can't say like, well, I was making $2,000 a month last year off of CERB. You're not allowed to count that either in terms of like how much income you've lost, right? So you had to have been making a significant amount of money in 2019 and then not been claiming expenses like gas and travel and food and writing off your car and writing off gear and stuff like that. And when you do that, it's great because you know, save money on tax because you're allowed to write off expenses as being, well, this is part of how I make my money, so I shouldn't be taxed on the full amount of the money I make because I actually have expenses that go against that. And, you know, and then when they go ahead and say, well, now you can't claim this benefit because you claimed all these write-offs 2 years ago, it's a little bit tough. If I could get access to that would help a great deal in terms of just feeling like I had the ability to be a little bit above water. But
a ton of money.
No, yeah.
It's not like you're raking it in. Like I remember can't remember, and this is me just basing it off of nothing, but I remember this one lady, I feel like she was some sort of this is like so like not official, but she was some sort of advisor or had some sort of job at like a news station, like a proper person job. And her net income was below $5,000 because she had, you know, claimed a bunch. And I'm like, this person's probably making like $50K a year. There's no way that $45,000 of that is expenses. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So for someone like that, it's like, okay, you kind of fucked yourself there. But it's like,
yeah, I guess
like us, we're not making 50K, 50, 60K a year.
No.
You know.
No,
I hate to put a number on it. It's so gross to talk about money, but like I'm definitely, without getting specific, I am definitely not making 50K a year. I'm making much less.
Yeah.
And I will not go into further detail because I've been told that that's gross.
No, sure. I mean, it's whatever you're comfortable sharing. I mean, all I'll say is I'm covering my rent, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
So, you know, anybody who's living in the city knows that there's a lot of other expenses other than rent. So that means that I'm sort of slowly bleeding through my savings, and I'm working as much as I can, and fortunate to be getting some extra, you know, gigs here and there. I don't know how much we've talked about Sound Better. We should maybe do like an entire episode on that website, but just like been exploring that a bit. I've been getting a little bit of work, and it's not like it's not huge money and it's not huge work, but it's just another avenue to go down. And I feel like we need to look for all of those little niche things and just try them out. Now is the time to try stuff like that out, right? But yeah,
we exactly. should talk about that in this episode, just like the little things that we're doing. Because, you know, the article, I don't know if we've said it already, but it's like the death of the middle-class musician. It's like as we know it, you know, as we knew it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you know, what about fucking losers like us that have a podcast and we're selling merch and we're doing a Patreon? And obviously, we're not making money now. Yeah. But in a decade, if we fucking play our cards right, maybe we'll be able to make enough money that we can do music too, and not have to fucking, you know, compromise.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's get into that article. So I saw this article pop up on Facebook, a few people's feeds that, you know, I follow or whatever. It was an article on CBC, and we're gonna link to it in the show notes. It's written by Jackson Weaver, who I'm not familiar with, but I thought the article was a little bit clickbaity, you know. It was like, is this the end for the music, you know, musicians and like blah blah blah, you know, but whatever. You gotta, that's kind of what you do in journalism right now, is you put a flashy headline and get people to read the article. But so I read it, and I sort of said like, okay, where is this coming from, and what is this, you know, what is this article trying to accomplish, and what is it trying to communicate? And there was like a few main points, and I think the main concern coming from this article was that we're in danger of losing our quote unquote middle class music industry, like, which I think would apply to people like you and I. I think this is a bit more artist focused, this article, in terms of like, you know, up and coming new bands, new artists who are trying to tour, they're trying to put records out, and there's really just no there's really no framework for that now. And I think that's like a pretty interesting discussion. I think it applies to guys like you and I, and people who are just trying to make a living at this industry and doing the best they can, which is kind of what this podcast is about. So I thought this article sort of hit pretty close to what we're trying to do here. So it sort of starts with saying, like, obviously there's no live music, right? So like that's where the bulk of the earnings are going to be for most of us, artists and players alike, right? Because
what about selling CDs?
Yeah, exactly. Because that's not really much of a thing. I mean, you'll sell some merch at a show, but pretty unlikely that somebody is gonna go to your artist website and like buy a physical CD from there or buy a T-shirt. Like people do that stuff at the concert where they can maybe get it signed, autographed or something, right? So obviously that was a huge blow. Everybody understands why that was, is necessary for that to happen. But I thought they brought up a really interesting point right after that. And sort of the sub headline of the section of the article is "Art Thrives as Artists Struggle." And they were saying that, like, what did everybody do as soon as the lockdowns were fully in place? It's like, well, watched a bunch of Netflix, or like listened to a bunch of music, or maybe watched a music documentary on Netflix, or watched a music concert on Netflix. And so they're saying that the Recording Industry Association of America and the British phonograph industry reported an increase in music consumption right around the pandemic. So the argument here is like, art is what's getting us through this horrible situation that we're all in, right? Like, what would we do without Netflix? What would we do without music? And it's like, yeah, you know what? That's super valid. Yet, what's the compensation for artists that are, making music? Well, they get $0.0038 per stream on Spotify.
Sure.
So, the stat they list here is like, okay, if I wanted to make $30,000 a year, I would need 6 million streams, to do that. And like, how many people have 6 million streams? And that's not accounting for the amount of promotion and the amount of pounding the ground and touring and playing and whatever you would have to do, which all costs an absurd amount of money. Anybody who's been on the road understands how expensive it is to tour and have a band with you and all that kind of stuff. So, basically just saying, it's like, look, art is sort of is saving us in a way. I mean, not literally, science and medicine and frontline workers are saving us, but art is sort of keeping everybody sane to a certain extent. And it's like, yeah, still artists are not being, really compensated for that. So I thought that was a good point. And I'm not sure how you remedy that, but I thought it was a good point.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those funny things with the Spotify things, because I've seen it's unfortunately, the more as I get older, and obviously people may obviously have experienced, oh my God, I can't make words today. Okay. The more that I get older, I experience that you can kind of argue anything, right?
Yes.
So I'll see an article that's like, Spotify is the devil and, we have to get rid of it. And then like an article that's like, oh, Spotify's not that bad. And they've made that article made a really good point that comparing it to the radio, on the radio, you make more money for plays, right? Is that a right assumption?
I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, you certainly see more, like, I know as a person who's registered for Sound Exchange and Actor Racks and these sort of performance, royalty type companies, the satellite radio is what seems to actually generate the most. And we're not talking like, I got a check for $20 from Sound Exchange one time because I played on a
but I've heard
track.
people get
I mean, I've heard of people getting far more than
obscene
that too,
sums of
but
money.
yeah, and then it's then you get your
But-
SOCAN check or your CD Baby check for your streams, and it's like, oh, it's like $1.50. Great, quarterly.
Yeah.
Right.
But-
so clearly there's
So
a
the
difference there.
idea behind the radio versus the Spotify thing is, and this is a good point, is that for radio play, not I guess for satellite radio, because satellite radio, is that on play on demand or is that like a channel?
It's a channel. Yeah, it'd be a channel with
Okay, so with the channel, multiple people are listening to it.
yes.
So you play on the radio, say 800 people listen to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So 800 people are contributing to that, whereas one play is one person.
Yes.
So I thought that was really neat. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, Spotify is definitely not. It's not fair yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean
like, it is funny that people are listening to it more, and it doesn't seem like people are artists are getting more as a result of that.
No, and
So-
I mean it really begs the question: when was the industry ever really fair to artists and the creators? Like when,
Yeah.
when the industry was at its height and CDs were selling like hotcakes and they were making money hand over fist, you still like the artist still was not getting, the lion's share of that CD
Sure.
revenue, right? That was mostly going to the labels who were putting it in their own pockets and or using it to speculate on new acts and try to develop more bands and stuff. It still wasn't really like, I mean, the people at the very top are obviously always going to be making a ton of money, and the people at the bottom are going to be making very little. I think that's true for most industries, but yeah, I don't know that it was ever really fair, and it certainly still isn't. And so the question is like what to do about that, right? So so this article sort of goes into the idea of a minimum wage for musicians, and there's a group called the Union of Musicians and Allied Workers, and they have a movement called Justice at Spotify, which actually had a protest. I think it was like a worldwide sort of protest where they were setting up outside Spotify offices. This was on March 15th. So I'd be interested to hear from any of our listeners, like if they were there or if they, heard about this or, know what sort of went down and if anything was sort of accomplished here. So, there are forces sort of lobbying, Spotify should be paying more, like a cent per stream instead of less than half a cent. And then there's groups like this sort of lobbying government saying, musicians deserve at least minimum wage. We need support from a sort of a government level. And, so
that's a hard one.
it's tough, right? Like, and I don't really know what the answer is. I think that what these people are doing is very noble. And you sort of said something before that we started the show is like, there's kind of two kinds of people in this situation. There's the people who will lobby for, better, more fair wages and stuff. And then there's the people who will just be like, either like, screw this, I'm going to just quit music and do something else, or I'm going to keep doing music, but I'm going to find another way to make money. I'm not going to rely on Spotify. I'm not going to rely
Let's start
on
a podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like you and I kind of fall more into that category. Not that there's, any approach is better or worse. Like, you got to do what you got to do. Like, if you can't make a living at music, then you shouldn't. You maybe should be doing music, right? Or like if you feel that there's unfairness going on and you want to lobby for that, I think that's super noble, and we need those people to be doing that. So I 100% support that.
Because I don't do any of that.
And then I think there's
know what people I can't stand though? I can't stand the people that say we should just get rid of Spotify.
Yeah.
It's not gonna fucking happen.
No.
It's like, so I was even thinking about this. I've thought about this before. Like, portraits way back in the day, a painter had to paint those and they cost a fuckload of money. And then cameras came out, and eventually cameras, just eliminated that need.
Yeah.
And like the portrait people, weren't going to be like, yeah, you just make cameras illegal. It's just new technology. It's the way that shit's going to go.
Yeah.
My brother's calling me for a second time during this podcast. He does this all the time. Yeah, and it's the same with Spotify. It's out there. It's never going to go away. But the lobbying people are so useful because they'll make it better, and also too, it's going to force us to evolve.
Yeah.
So 50 years from now, we're not going to be worried about Spotify. It's like Spotify is not going to be the issue, you know. But yeah, no, the people who say that you shouldn't use Spotify, I disagree.
To like boycott the service altogether to try and do damage to them. Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's.
It's like.
I think there's a lot of value to voting with your wallet. You know, like if you don't feel like a service is fair or whatever, you don't like what they're doing. Like, there's a lot of people I know that are like, I never shop at Walmart because I don't like what they're about. It's like, well, that makes sense to me. You know, if you don't like what they're about and you, but you're going there and spending money, then that's a little bit weird, right?
Critical.
So yeah, I mean, maybe, you know, or maybe, you know, you have to go there because that's what you can afford and that's what, you know, it is what it is. But like, so I think there's definitely some value to that. And, you know, I would love to see, I know there was, you know, the service Tidal was trying to be a bit more sustainable.
Yeah.
That just got sold to the Twitter guy, and I don't really know what's happening there. But yeah, I think there's some value to that. I think to say that, like, you know, streaming is killing the music industry is like, well, it's like you said, that we can't go back from that. Streaming is actually like a pretty good place to land after, you know, what Napster did, right? So it's actually, we're actually in a spot where these companies have found a way in which to generate income from something that people were just taking for free completely. So that's actually kind of amazing, right? They made it convenient enough and secure enough that they've essentially killed downloading because people just don't want to bother with, you know, messing around with that. And then they can just point and click and listen to whatever they want at any given time. So I actually think, you know, if you're saying that the advent of streaming is like a bad thing, and I think it's actually probably saved the music industry. But, and you know, if you have qualms with how these companies are paying artists and running stuff, then yeah, like vote with your wallet. I would encourage people to support the artists they want to support directly, and that's where something like, you know, Patreon comes in, or something like buying merch, or you know, a lot of artists now are trying out streaming, and I don't mean streaming in the Spotify sense. I mean in the YouTube Live sense, or Instagram Live, or Twitch, or what have you. And it's like, yeah, that's where you can, you know, go and support these people directly. I think that's where the industry is really going to turn. Don't you? Is it just to like direct, like crowdfunding or just direct support? Like that's, you don't need the label anymore. You don't need, say this. You know.
Yeah. I heard a dude say that literally like 15 years ago when I was playing one of those shitty Supernova shows where you have to sell a bunch of tickets to play a show, my God, which is criminal. But I was in like high school, and they said, oh, like it was a label dude. And he was like, oh yeah, you don't really need labels anymore. We're seeing lots of people who are like, or not that you don't need labels, but there's the middle ground now. Whereas like in the time, we've said this before, on like Led Zeppelin, you know, like in Led Zeppelin's time, you know, you were either Led Zeppelin or someone in that area, or you were no one. You know what I mean? Like there's no like, oh yeah, I'm a singer-songwriter that tours, and you know, I sell my merch, I get my money, I make my money from streams. It's like they either made you a star because you were great, or you didn't get to be one, you know? Whereas now, like someone like us, with the tools of Spotify and selling, you know, merch online, like the Printify thing is great. The fact that, you know, we don't have to print merchandise and invest in it, and someone can get the same thing. You know, we lose a bit of money in that sense, but it's more convenient, you know? So there's lots of like tools now for us to be able to do. Like even who's that guy? Who did that song Thrift Shop?
Oh man. Starts with an M.
Yeah, it's a while ago.
Macklemore.
Yeah. So he was the first person to have a number one who's not on a label.
Right.
And that was like,
that was a while back.
I want to say that was like, yeah, maybe a decade ago. But like, you know, and there's a reason for that. You know,
Yeah.
the industry's maybe, going more towards entrepreneurs and like less towards like, yeah, I'm just a great singer. That's all I do.
Yeah.
That's all I have. I mean, unless you have a great manager, you know,
Yeah.
great manager who like really sets up everything, which I don't think that exists.
I mean, that can still
You know.
work, but I think when people look at,
It's rare.
yeah, I think it's pretty unusual, right? Like, I think when people look at the industry and what they think the path to success is, because I'm also reading in this article, they're talking about the venue ladder, you know, and you know, the idea is like, oh, well, you start at the small club, and then you get the opening spot at the medium club, and then you headline the medium club, and then you get the opening spot at the big club, and then eventually you headline the big club, and then you get noticed and you get signed. And it's like, maybe that's how that used to work like 50 years ago, but I mean, there were the live music venues were shutting down long before the pandemic happened. That probably just, you know, put the final dagger in a lot of them, but you know, there was barely any places to play original live music anyways. So I think that is just sort of a product of I don't know, like the culture. Like, do people just not care anymore about going out and seeing a live band? I feel like that's just kind of where we're at, and I felt that tide was sort of was coming on, you know, way before the pandemic. So I don't really know what to make of that, other than like, it's time to find new and different ways to make this work. Like, and I want to sort of,
and they're there.
They're there. Yeah, they are there. And I want to sort of touch on like, I want to be careful with how I say this, because I want to preface this by saying that I think anybody who is fighting Spotify for fair wage, or saying like musicians deserve fair wage, I think that's awesome. I think that's great. So I want to be careful with what I say here, but I also want to touch on like the idea that just because you want to make a living at something doesn't mean that you should be able to. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think that's fair.
I think that, like,
on first glance,
yeah, and I think it's a kind of like, and this is, I'm treading into dangerous territory, so I'm going to be careful what I say here. But you know, it's like, not every industry, not everything can be an industry. Not everything can support everybody who wants to get into it financially, right? So, I think that you do have to be scrappy if you want to put together a living wage, and like, and that's just me coming from what I've done to sort of put together a very modest, barely making rent living wage at this point, man. You know, like, I just don't know, like, if you're making
before the pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, even before the pandemic, absolutely. Yeah. I'm just thinking, like, you know, if you're making, you know, I don't know, you know, jazz is a genre that sort of gets harped on a bunch, but like, if you're a jazz musician, you know, should you expect to make a living wage? You know, in the 60s, probably you could, but you know, nowadays, can you? I don't know, you know, and just because, and you might be great, and just because you want to make a living at something doesn't mean that that's going to happen. Like, I don't know.
But also, if you're rigid and like, yes, I am a jazz saxophone player, and this is all I do. These are the only things I will do to make money.
Yeah.
Then I feel like you don't at this point deserve to make a living, because there's tons of people that do that, and like, you have to be open to like pivot, like you and I have, for sure.
Yeah, maybe
is teaching the thing that you set out to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, maybe deserve is maybe the wrong word. So I want to retract that, if that's the language I was using. But because what people deserve and what they get is often quite different, right?
Yes.
But I think what we're both trying to say here is like, sometimes it just doesn't work out that way, because this is what the climate is. Like, you know what I mean? This is just where the industry's at. Like I can't expect
Yes.
to. I don't think it's reasonable to expect to make a living wage, you know, just by doing my own singer-songwriter thing. It's just not going to happen. I feel like that's unreasonable for me to expect that, you know. But if go ahead. Yeah.
If you had a 10-year plan, if you had like a 10-year plan and you're like, eventually I'm going to work towards making more of my living from performing my shows and selling my merch and having a podcast. You know what I mean? And like, I make more money with the podcast, so I don't have to make as much money teaching, and I can play some shows. You know what I mean? I think that's more realistic. That's kind of what I was saying with the jazz saxophone thing. It's like, if you are willing to maybe be like, I bet you any money some of the radio hosts on the jazz stations are jazz musicians.
Oh, definitely.
But they're like, I do the radio show a bit, and you know, and I do my jazz gigs, and I make money, and I do maybe like special events or like special things. You know, like that kind of shit. I just mean when people are rigid and like, I'm going to be a fucking 80s shred metal, you know, guitarist, and like, or I'm going to be the next Steve Vai, but I'm going to sound like, you know, some guy from the 80s and be like a virtuoso guitar player and do instrumental guitar music, but I'm not going to teach.
Not going to teach. Only want to make,
just going to be
only want to make money playing club gigs and like touring and playing live. And it's like, well, man, that might not happen, and it might not be the kind of thing where you can say like, you know, government, give me minimum wage because I'm doing this thing. Like, I mean, you can say that, and you have the right to, and you have the, you know, the voice to do that. But the way that I've approached it has been more like, just kind of scrapping it out, just trying to kind of find like what can I do to sort of, you know, make some money at this thing, because
you found things that you like in that though.
Yes, yeah. But like, you know what's interesting though?
High school probably wouldn't have never done production.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, I always kind of was interested in it, but I mean, I think for me, it's like as long as I'm doing something with music, I'm pretty happy. So I'm able to sort of move around and find different things and make it work. But you know what's interesting though is I think that you can be more specialized nowadays. You just need to find the right outlet. You need to find your audience. And I think the way that you might do that is through something like Twitch or through something like Patreon, or, you know, where you can find the audience that actually really loves what you're creating, and you don't have to hit the mainstream audience in the traditional way. You don't have to spend $100,000 hitting the road in a van with a band and like trying to do it that way. Like there are other ways. You don't
have to have $100,000 to do it.
And I think there's other ways to sort of get out there and I'm not saying I've got the answers to any of these questions. I just think this is interesting things to think about. But like, I think that might be the way that it starts to turn. Whereas like, if you are highly specialized and really, really good at, you know, one thing, then you're going to find the people that really love that one thing and they will support you. Whereas if you're like me and you're like medium at a bunch of things, then, you know, you're going to be scrapping it out and sort of finding work wherever you can and just doing the best work you can all the time. And that's another way to approach it.
Until something clicks.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, what if the agenda becomes the production team, you know, like you guys click and it's like, we're the production team that is hip and, you know, we barely gig anymore. You know what I mean?
I mean, we would love for that to happen.
What if you guys get a really good gig?
Yeah.
You know, like that sort of shit.
We would love for that to happen. We're not, you know, we're not expecting it to happen, and we're certainly not like demanding,
banking on it,
you know, that we get wage for it. It's just like we're just trying to get gigs. We're just trying to work, you know? So, I mean, that's just where kind of, I mean, that's just kind of where I'm coming from. And I just feel like there's a lot of untapped sort of ways to make this work for people. So if you're looking for that, if you're looking for different ways to make things happen, then that's what I would suggest is like, how can you find that audience and get that direct connection and that direct support, you know?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
if you're like, we're getting ripped off by these big streaming companies, we need to fight them. That's also amazing too. And like, let's also do that. You know?
Good for you.
That's kind of what I'm,
it's
that's kind of my stance on it.
One side note, I cannot wait until shit is together enough for us to do this podcast in the same goddamn room.
Oh man.
It's so, sometimes it can be such a bummer where it's like, I know there's a latency. So it's like sometimes literally both of us have to do it. We have to like steamroll the other.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
We're talking to be like, and this is the thing I'm going to say. You know?
Yeah.
Like, it's a bummer. But yeah, no, dude, I agree. One thing I don't want to sound like is super like conservative, pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of behavior. Like anyone can be rich. It's just they're not working hard enough.
No,
you know?
that's
but, like,
that's not what I'm trying to say.
No, I know that's not what you're trying to say, but I feel like sometimes I sound like that when I'm saying this, and it's like sometimes I have to like remind myself, you know, like of that, you know, like sometimes there are situations that do not allow you to pursue things the same way. Because as much as you and I, it's like we're middle class, you know, we didn't come from wealth, which is a whole nother thing. I get too absorbed about the idea that somebody's, you know, a rich kid and they're getting all these opportunities, and I don't think it necessarily works like that. But yeah, like, yeah, some people get fucked over, and it's like they gotta do so much just to survive that they don't have time to fucking, you know, make a podcast and all that shit.
Yeah.
But it's just, I get bummed about the Spotify thing when people treat it as just this curse.
Yeah.
Just as you said, yeah, it's probably kept the music industry more alive.
Oh, for sure.
Than anything.
Well, I mean, I think you really said it right there with just like, sometimes there are just factors and situations that aren't going to allow you to make a living doing what you're doing, whether or not you're great at it or you work hard or you don't. And I think it's like, I think it's a great opportunity right now to look at how this industry has been like built and how we can sort of attack it differently. You know, now that we're sort of faced with this, it's like, well, you can't play live anymore. It's like, shit, that's where all our money came from. So like, we don't, you know, we don't have a choice about that. And like, that's just the way things are. So it's like, how are we gonna hit this up differently? So yeah.
I mean, so this is sorry to interrupt, but this is an interesting thing. I've seen a lot of people get into TikTok, and the one person that, you know, we know that was gotten to TikTok and very talented, but, you know, they actually got a record deal because their song really took off on TikTok, and their TikTok in general really took off, and labels were like, whoa, this is like a lightning in a bottle thing we can't make sense of yet, and this person's good, so we're going to jump at it. But I have seen other people who were not as much TikTok people on my Instagram talk about, oh man, my last video just got 300,000 views, and like they have like, you know, no subscribers, and they go from like, you know, 200 subscribers to like 5,000 or 6,000.
Wow.
And it's like, I think that Spotify has, and the pandemic has maybe forced people to pivot, you know?
Yeah.
Instead of just being like, oh, this is gonna suck, because it does, but you know,
it does, man. I mean, but you know what? It's never been easy. It's never been fair, you know? So it's like, how do we leverage the fact that you can really connect with people now directly to just do it that way? That's what I think is going to happen. I hope, anyways. I just don't think that the structure is there anymore with like the big companies and labels and stuff to do things the old way, and that's the way that everybody wants to do things still, but it's just not. I just don't think it's realistic. So
how many people do you know who have gotten a record deal who it hasn't done anything for them?
A handful. Yeah. Not like a ton.
Yeah.
I don't know a ton of people who've gotten signed.
Yeah,
though, so.
Out of the two people that exactly. Out of the two people that I know that were unsigned when I met them and then they got signed, both of them, the record label has just been like, yeah, cool, you're on a record label. Go.
Yeah.
You know, like, it hasn't been like, oh, we're going to buy you a fucking car and, you know, you're gonna work with like the Phil Spector of today. You know? Some bullshit like that.
Kind of
I don't know why
not
Phil
really how it
Spector is
goes.
who I went to.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I would love to know like what
I don't know.
people listening think about all this stuff, and like if you think, you know, are we completely wrong about this? Are we barking up the right tree? Like, what are folks doing to sort of stay afloat, or are a lot of people out there just being like, you know what, screw it, this isn't worth it. I'm gonna play music, I'm gonna enjoy music, but I'm gonna make my money somewhere else, you know, because that's a totally valid way of doing it as well, right? The last thing I wanted to touch on was just like, I think that we're gonna really have a weird time getting back, you know, to the live music thing. I think we're gonna be some of the very, very last people to get back to work in that sense. And I feel like when we do go back,
I'm not, motherfucker.
Well, that's true because you're on the cruise. Yeah, that's true. There you go. So there's another avenue. But I just mean, you know, those people out there that are trying to play venues, trying to play bars and stuff. Like, that's gonna be one of the last things to come back. And I think when it does, I think that I think the musicians are gonna get paid less than we did before the pandemic hit, because the capacity is gonna be lower. Right? There's all these new sanitation measures they're going to have to abide by, but they're still going to have to pay their staff the same. They're still going to have to pay, you know, their alcohol and food costs are going to be the same. So what is it going to be? It's going to be, well, you know, we're going to pay our band less, you know? And I'm getting ready for that.
That's the thing. I feel like maybe this is like a warning to everyone, including myself. I don't deal with bars, really. Like, I'm not the person who does the dealing with bars.
Yeah.
But anybody who's booking shit, just like, you have to be like ready for that. You know, when you go to book your first bar gig, they're gonna be like, yeah, you know, everybody's taking a hit. So, you know, we're gonna pay you, you know, $25 less a guy. And you have to have something ready in your mind to be like, no, fuck no.
Yeah.
Hands off my sandwich. Remember that commercial?
Yeah.
You know, like, and I think if every musician
sandwich.
does that, and it's like, no, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
But without saying go fuck yourself, I think that'd be okay. Because people are talking about this whole idea that when stuff gets back to normal, we're gonna have like a musical renaissance. You know, because that's what they had after the Spanish flu, was it? And maybe we will. You know, I do think
I'm kind of that opinion as well.
Real fun.
Yeah, I think it could be a real big boom. Yeah. So, you know, and to that point that you just made, I'm not really ready to accept that I should get paid less when we come back. I've been kind of operating under the, like, my rate is still the same that it was before. I'm still doing the same work. You know, like, of course it's a case-by-case basis. There's always going to be certain projects you're working on where, you know, but that's the same as it was before the pandemic. You know, nothing is really...
Stuff that's closer to the heart.
Yeah, none of that stuff has really changed, but like, I'm operating under the assumption that my rate is the same as it was before, and like, I'm just not really gonna change it. I don't think, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I would encourage people to like, I would encourage people to not lower their rates, because like I think that's what a lot of the bars and venues and festivals are going to try to do, and I don't think it's fair. I think we're going to be the last people to get back to work. We're going to be the people that are providing the service, and for some reason it always just seems like people feel like they could pay us less. So I would say no to that. I would say no, man, it's still the same.
It's an easy thing.
Yeah.
There's 1,000 people that will take your fucking place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
I to be honest, I think that if just, you know, going in that that's a possibility. These guys, same with like when you go in to negotiate like a fucking car, which I did horribly. I did such a bad job negotiating my car.
Me too. I'm not good at negotiating.
Go in knowing. Yeah, when you go in knowing what you're supposed to get and what they can probably do to try to sort of weasel your way into it, you know, that sort of thing, and what you have to offer them and like leverage and all that shit. Once again, I'm a really bad negotiator. I didn't even tell the guy that I paid partly in cash. So he would have given me a deal, and I paid him partly in cash. He's like, "Oh, that's cool," and I probably could have gotten like $500 knocked off because of that, because it was a chunk of cash. Anyways, but I feel like if you know that going in, just expect that and have something in response for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's good, solid advice.
I don't think the bars are gonna be like, well, no, go fuck yourselves, because they're gonna want bands. Like, people are going to be dying to go to shows, getting drunk, dancing, maybe mingling. I'm single, you know. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah,
mingling around, having a few drinks.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be an easy way for companies to sort of be like, yeah, we're gonna here's where we're gonna save the money, you know, and I don't see how that's fair. So, but you know, that's my opinion. So yeah, I think you're right. It's just be prepared for that. You know, we're always sort of getting the short end of the stick, so be prepared for that. But yeah, I think like hopefully this episode didn't come off too negative, but I really feel like, you know, it's time to look for different ways to make our bread rather than the traditional channels, because they're just not really, they're not there. Like, you can't make a living through Spotify streams. You can't, you know, so find a way that, you know, you can, rather than, and again, that's just, you know, I appreciate and respect everybody who's lobbying for this, because I think it's super important. But it's just, for me, I'm of the opinion, it's like, well, you know what, I'm not going to count on this old school style way of doing things. I'm going to see how can we do this differently. And I would love to hear from listeners, like, what are you guys doing? What are your plans? What are you going to try to do to sort of to stay alive in this industry? Because I think at the end of the day, we will stay alive. There will still be people making music and making a living, and it's just gonna have to be in a different way than we're all sort of brought up traditionally, sort of believing is how the industry worked. Yeah.
My whole mindset right now is the fucking thing we always talk about, the fucking marathon. Also, my idea of being a cockroach and just surviving anything and being scrappy. Scrappy is a word that I identify with so much. So thank you for saying that. But I reject this article to a certain extent. I haven't read it, but you know, like, I think it's like the death of the old school. It's like going to be the birth of the new type of musician that's, you know, a little bit more of a hustler, a little bit more control of their own destiny. But it's like I think you'd have to have some pretty particular circumstances to be a one-trick pony nowadays.
I think most people would
be like,
would agree.
Yeah. Like, so yeah, don't do that shit. If you're untalented like me and Al, and you just have to scrap everything together, every last fucking thing. It's like, oh, you want me to learn piano? Fuck yeah, I'll learn piano. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You want me to fucking play with this stupid beat pad? I'll fucking do it, and I'll do a great job at it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, go figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, that's a pretty good place to wrap us up. If you want to reach out to us, I'm at Alvaro Music on social media. Would love to chat with anybody about this kind of stuff. I find this all super interesting, and want to get through this, man, like everybody else, because I think it's gonna, as we get closer to the quote unquote the reopening, I think it's gonna get more and more challenging. So I'm for you know, people in the music industry. So I want to know what people are doing, and would love your feedback on this episode and the topics and opinions expressed herein. Michael Hebbs is at Bruno the Meek on social media, Instagram, stuff like that. You can reach the podcast at Music Guy Podcast on Instagram and Twitter. And you can find us at our website, musicguypodcast.com, where you can find links to the shop, soon to be a link to the Patreon if you want to support the show directly, which we very much appreciate. And you can also always send us feedback to musicguypodcast@gmail.com. We're going to get to a song of the week. I don't know what that is yet, so I will edit that in. But any final thoughts, Mike?
I think, yeah, I don't think it's a negative thing at all. Um, I I'm realized that my life is going to be different than like my friends who have 9 to 5s. It's not gonna be better. It's just gonna be different. You
Mhm.
know, I'm not gonna fucking own a house for literally ever. But you know, like maybe I will. Maybe you know, like we'll be fine.
Yeah.
Just you know, go do your thing. It'll be fine. We'll get through it. I mean, I'm not having a particularly hard time right now though. So
Yeah.
this is Mike in optimism mode, saying we're gonna get through it. I'm saying this to Mike when Mike's sad and depressed and in his cycle, needs to go on a walk. We'll be fine.
Yeah.
Just fucking.
It'll be fine. Just do your thing, but do
like
your
a
thing
cockroach.
really well. Do really good work. Care about the outcome of your
Yeah,
work,
that's
you know,
fine.
and
Yeah.
and just
You'll be fine.
and I hope things will work out, but we'll see. We'll see. All right,
Oh,
everybody.
they fucking will, Al. They fucking will.
They will.
Don't
Okay.
you dare. Don't you dare end with a we'll see. We'll see if things are going to be okay. Struggle breeds success.
You're right. You're right.
I'm
I
clicking
like
like
I like what you're
We'll
about
be
right
fine.
now.
I'm feeling it
You're
right now.
fired up.
This is what I need to say to myself to face every single fucking day. To just wake up and be like, you're fucking 32, single, and you don't own a home, and you know, it's like, okay, Bruno, you got this.
You got this. Everybody out there, you got this.
You got this.
We love you.
You got this.
Bye for now.